Next pop-up is Overbet pop-up. Overbet pop-up will give us all information we need to know our opponent's strategy when it comes to overbetting. Left side of the pop-up is out of position, right side is in position. We have how he play against an overbet and how he play when he's making overbet out of position, and the same is in position. We're going to start with out of position versus overbet. We see that this player is folding 60% to an overbet. He's calling 34%. When we hover over it, we can see with which type of hand he's calling on overbet on a turn, and we can see distribution here of his calling range. Also, we can see here how he plays river when he has called an overbet on the turn. In this spot, he's calling 36% of hands, 36%, and we can see with which type of hands he's calling. When he's called overbet on the turn, with which hands he is calling a river with. We see a distribution here, and when we go hover over it, we can see a context of the hand also. For example, here we see that this player has called an overbet on the turn when the 9 has hit on the turn, and then he has also called an small overbet on the river with that hand. We can also see here with the king jack, and we can know the context of the hand. We can see the sizes here and stuff like that. We see here a turn check raise range against an overbet. When we hover it, we want to know is the player, really important stat here is this. We see that he's turn check raising against an overbet 6%, but we want to know which type of hands he's using for a raise against an overbet. And if we see here, we see that 46% is a 2 pair plus, and this is really important to take into consideration, because if a player is check raising against an overbet with a lot of his value hands, then he will be capped when he's calling an overbet, and against these type of players you want to apply maximum pressure on the river and like overbetting, shoving on the river when they call turn on a good runout, because if they are check raising their value hands, their call range will be really poor, and you want to attack that range. Here is general how he play against an overbet on the river. We see river check fold against an overbet generally, and a check call against an overbet generally. And also when we hover over it, we will see with which type of hands he's calling an overbet. We will see sizes used as a call on the river, and a distribution of the hands. Then we can go to the out of position making overbets. We see that when this player he's overbetting the turn out of position 4% of the time, we can hover over it and we can see distribution of the hands that he is doing with, and when we hover over it again, we can see a context of the hand if we want, because by going into the context scan you will have a better idea what the player was trying to do. Okay, then we see how much he will fold to raise after making overbet. It's a quite important stats, because we'll then see basically the strength of his overbetting range. And then we see how much they will bet river after they had overbet the turn. For example, he has overbet turn 4% of the time, and after he had overbet the turn, he has continued river 64% of the time. He used overbet size again 44% of the time, and we can see a distribution of the range, which is also really important to take into consideration which hands he is bluffing. For example, we can hover over here to see he has overbet the turn out of position 1.5 pot with 8-10 in this spot. It is a gutshot in this spot, and when the river has come 7 again, he shoved 5x in this spot. So you want to see always context of the hand to have a better idea what the player was trying to do. And also we have a fold versus the raise on the river. That also indicates the strength of their river overbet. Then we have same thing as in position. In position versus overbet, how they play, with which hands they are calling it, which hands they are raising with, and also how they play on the river. It's really important to know generally which numbers you can take advantage of. So for example, if a player is folding on turn more than like 65%, then the overbet is really good against this type of players, and if they are folding river like 70% plus, then you have a profitable also river overbet. You will also always want to think about the ranges, about your range and how river has hit your range or how river hits opponent range, and take that in consideration, but the numbers are also really important. uh, we'll go now to a next pop-up.